YouTube, Shukran Shubby here with another ramble, and today's topic is Transformers Age of Extinction. I checked it out yesterday, which was Friday for me, the premiere date, even though it kind of premiered on Thursday night, but whatever, technicalities. I didn't feel like going on Thursday. I had a podcast to record that night, so me and my friend Jeff went on Friday. And at the end of the day, I really enjoyed it. Now, a word of warning here. I am one of the people who actually did enjoy all of the three previous Transformers movies. Revenge of the Fallen sucked. There's no getting around that. There are parts that I do enjoy, but outside of those few parts, Revenge of the Fallen is really hard to watch multiple times. I thought the original movie was really well done and probably the strongest of the three, but when you're in a world-building sort of environment, it's always kind of going to be the strongest. Dark of the Moon, I didn't have a whole lot of problems with plot-related stuff there, but so Dark of the Moon I thought was really good. The first movie I thought was great, and the Revenge of the Fallen just was dick. So that being said, I just did want to mention that I was someone who previously enjoyed all of the other Transformers movies, and to make a long story short, I feel like this film is probably something that if you enjoyed the previous movies, you'll like this one. If you did not enjoy the other movies, I don't think there's anything really in this movie that would make you change your mind. Now, having experienced all the other Transformers movies, I always go into these with a mindset knowing that it isn't going to be fantastic. There's going to be tons of flaws. Be it Michael Bay or whoever he hires to do his shit. I don't really know where the entire issue is. I guess it's just easy to blame Michael Bay because it's probably his fault. But at the end of the day, that these aren't really films that are going to have a hardcore plot or any sort of huge redeeming story value. It's mostly going to be explosions and robots, and that is why I go see the movies, for explosions and robots. So I walked out of Age of Extinction with a grin on my face. I liked it. There was definitely flaws, and I will get into that. And I wrote down a bunch of bullet points I kind of wanted to hit. I didn't organize the bullet points or organize my thoughts. As I never really do for these, because it wouldn't be a ramble if it was organized. So we're just going to kind of wing it here. The first thing I kind of want to address is the plot of the film, since without a plot, movie stuff is kind of important. So it wasn't awful. I think coming out of Dark of the Moon, Chicago is in ruins, and obviously people are going to be upset. And at the start of this movie, you sort of feel that tension, that people are nervous of the existence of the Autobots and Transformers in general. And so basically, in an effort to eliminate the remaining Decepticons, the U.S. government is like, yo, CIA, take care of them bitches, in a nutshell. And now the head of the CIA, Kelsey Grammer, fucking Frazier, is basically just an asshole who wants all Transformers completely obliterated. It's a very X-Men-esque thing going on here. So he doesn't care if it's Autobot or if it's Decepticon. He wants them dead. Ultimately, he wants them dead because he can harvest the metal, the material that the Transformers are made out of, to melt it down and use it to create his own Transformers through a company called KSI. There we go. And so they try to develop their own Transformers, and they actually succeed, and it kind of sets up the, I don't want to say Rise of the Decepticons, even though it'll kind of sort of turn into that later. But you guys aren't here for a summary or anything like that. But I liked that sort of element. At the end of Dark of the Moon, the entire Decepticon roster was just gone. Like, it was no more. I forgot, someone went into space. I think I'm trying to remember the end of that movie. Was it Shockwave? I think that went into space. I don't know. They retreated, whoever it was, and everyone else was dead. Megatron was dead. I think Starscream was still living. I don't remember exactly. Um, but the key part here is that most of the Decepticons at the end of the last movie were dead. So at the start of this movie, they're trying to round up the remaining bits of the Decepticon forces that managed to get away and are hiding on Earth, but they're capturing the Autobots too. So unfortunately, you do have a couple casualties. Poor Ratchet, toward the beginning of the movie, um, it was talked about how Ratchet was in this movie, and he was. I just wasn't expecting his purpose to simply be to get killed. Uh, I guess that's to be expected, given how he didn't have any like Wave 1 or 2 toys. Should have been a giveaway. But yeah, poor Ratchet got killed and melted down. They showed footage of Leadfoot getting killed, but I don't think anyone really cared about Leadfoot. And so that was kind of the whole thing, is that the Autobots were getting hunted, Optimus Prime was pissed, and it basically sets up an atmosphere where the Autobots have, in essence, given up. And I thought it was a really interesting take, given how in the last movie the Autobots were so gung-ho on protecting the Earth, and then in the span of the 4 years in which the two movies take place, basically the humans turned into raging assholes because Chicago got destroyed, which is understandable. And I think that's one of the bits that I like the most about this, is that the actions from the previous movie had repercussions in this movie. The humans were not trusting of the Transformers, and that's completely understandable. Now, naturally, there are going to be people that respect the Autobots and not idolize the Autobots, but Cade, the main character, Mark Wahlberg, I don't want to say sympathize because that's a little bit of a weird word, but he didn't have that sort of mindset where, oh, they destroyed Chicago, they're bad people, robot things. So it was a kind of an interesting take, and I like the direction that the plot overall went toward the end of the film. I think one of the most interesting things is this reminded me a lot of the first movie in bits where it was very much a setup for what is to come. We have the introduction of the Dinobots, which was very wasted, and I'll get to that later. You have hints of these creators that Lockdown mentions multiple times. Now, I kind of have to go back and think about the continuity of these movies, which really gets beat around a lot. They kind of really need to settle on one continuity here. They keep messing with themselves. But there are creators that harvested this metal that could essentially be programmed and can change, and invented the Transformers. And if you've watched Generation 1, the first thing coming to mind is obviously it's the Quintessons. In Generation 1's normal cartoon continuity, the Quintessons made the Transformers, plopped them on Cybertron, and let them do their work. And so I'm very curious if the upcoming movies are gonna to touch upon that. I have a feeling they will. I don't see a reason to even bring it up if they weren't gonna expand upon it in movies 5 or 6. But I thought that was really interesting. As a person who grew up on G1 and stuff, the Quints are a part of the Transformers lore that don't often get touched upon in any sort of visual, not visual fiction, but like the cartoons or the movies or anything like that. So it's interesting to see the idea of the Quintessons, whether the creators are Quintessons or not, get brought up. So I do enjoy that. But so that's brought up. The dinosaurs were wiped out by the creators to make metal. There's these seeds, and the seeds explode, and they turn everything in the blast radius into this metal, and then they harvest all the metal. And that's essentially, from what I gather, what created the Dinobots. I'm not 100% on that because they never freaking explained it at all. But overall, I did like the plot of the movie, the rise of Galvatron, these proto-forms that KSI created, just sort of getting manipulated by Megatron, because whoever thought it was a brilliant idea to figure out how to build these via Megatron's head should be shot. It's probably Joshua Joyce. I don't know. But that was an awful idea. But you wouldn't have this movie without it. So I like that aspect of Galvatron, and it's not so much to a thing where Megatron just mysteriously comes back. It's not like the stupidity of Revenge of the Fallen where it's like, oh, shard of the Allspark that essentially killed Megatron will now revive Megatron. Yeah, Allspark. It's not anything stupid like that. Megatron's always going to survive. That's just a matter of fact. Hopefully he won't much longer. There's only, I think, 2 movies. So he'll probably last until the 6th one. But it's not so much of he was brought back to life. He was still living inside of his head, even though I don't think it was attached to his spark. I don't know how that works. So good old Transformers anthropology here. So anyway, he was still living inside his head. He's manipulating them to build a body in which he can control and then rise to power yet again. They're building prototypes. He's like, I can control the prototypes, build a new Decepticon army, use the Transformium, they called it. Basically, Megatron wanted the seed to blow up the biggest city in the world, which I'm not sure which one that is. And harvest all of the Transformium. I hate that word. Transformium and build a new Decepticon army using the technology that KSI has. And that's essentially what happened, even though most of his army got wiped out in the battle at China. But he escaped. He just walked away. They forgot about him. They're like, oh, what's a Galvatron? I don't know. He just walks away. But I actually thoroughly enjoyed Galvatron in the movie. He didn't have a whole lot of highlights. His role in this movie was more or less simply a war starter and a way to introduce his character for the upcoming films. At the very end of the movie, Lockdown finally bites the bullet. I'll talk about Lockdown a little more when I get to the Transformers as a whole. And Optimus Prime takes a seat. He's like, I need to save the day, and just flies off. He just boosts off into the sky. And it's like, I'll go find the creators and kill them. And I'll talk about Optimus in a second, too. And it's a kind of a weird way to end the movie, I guess, but it sets up for future sequels to either be set on an Earth without Optimus, which would be interesting given I really love the crew of Autobots that they got in this movie. I really do. Or have the main movie set in space with Optimus, and maybe he can find a couple more Autobots scattered around space, and they can go fight the Quintessons, and possibly Unicron, because I'm sure he'll get dragged into this movie continuity at some point, because Unicron. Yep. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do for movie 5. They have 2 routes that they could essentially take. They could take a look at both sides of the spectrum. They could bounce back and forth, which if done right would be really cool. Given the history of these movies, I don't know if they have the capacity to do it right. But I like these movies, and I'm still a little bit critical on certain things. So jumping away from the plot, since all I really keep voiding into is, oh, I liked it, it was cool. But the Transformers as a whole, so pretty much everyone in the previous movies is dead or gone or still hiding. I'm going to assume dead, because I feel like they probably would have showed up to Chicago 2.0 or Beijing if they had heard about it. So I'm going to assume that they're dead. Ironhide died in Dark of the Moon. Ratchet died at the beginning of this movie. Leadfoot we saw die, so it's easy to assume the other wreckers are probably dead too. KSI, as far as I know, actually it was the CIA and it's Fraser Crane and his group of mafia people essentially was killing all of the Autobots with the help of Lockdown. And that's actually a good point. Yep, words. To talk about Lockdown. I thought Lockdown was fantastic. Now, obviously, as Transformers fans, we have an idea of Lockdown in our head from animated. He is a bounty hunter. He collects various parts of Transformers that he kills. He's got a claw hook and stuff. Now, obviously, a lot of people were looking for more humanized Transformers in these movies. Because, I mean, ideally, the Transformers in the previous movies, outside of the first one that had a little bit of building, sans jazz, were all kind of treated as tools, as just props in a movie to make a spectacle. And there was never really a whole lot of humanizing in any of these characters except for Optimus. And I think one of the things that this movie did well compared to the other ones was really give a lot of time to the Autobots, and I thought that was great. There was a ton more speaking, I feel, between the Autobots in this movie compared to ones in the past. I mean, if you look at the rosters in Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon, there were just Transformers that were there to exist. Q in the Dark of the Moon, Mirage or Dino or whatever in Dark of the Moon, they served little to no purpose whatsoever, and they hardly spoke. I don't even know if Mirage, Dino, whatever, had a speaking line. Sideswipe never did a whole lot. It was just more or less a very much a mess the way that a lot of the Transformers were handled in the previous movies. There was simply new Transformers to sell toys, while sticking with the core group that they had from the previous movies. So you had the Ratchets and Ironhide and Bumblebee and Optimus Prime, and basically if you weren't any of those people, you kind of got shafted. Except for Skids and Mudflap, because they had to exist. But I like the way that the Transformers were represented in this movie. You have a core group of 5, and nothing actually happens to them. No one dies in it. It's great because I actually like all of them. So you have Optimus Prime, who I will talk about individually. Bumblebee, I like the way Bumblebee was handled in this movie. They utilized is the word I was looking for. His radio speak, I think, a little bit more efficiently in this episode. It was actually a lot of the times where he was using the radio speak, I thought was really funny. The scene inside KSI where they're talking about how Stinger, one of the new Decepticon drones, was like modeled after Bumblebee. He's new and hip. Bumblebee's ugly, and then the Bumblebee just gets really pissed. I actually really like that. I like my Bumblebees with a little bit of attitude, and so I thought it was kind of cool in that aspect. But I like the way he was handled. He wasn't front and center a whole lot in this movie, and I liked that. Bumblebee was always my favorite Transformer for personal reasons. It had little to do with his character. It was one of the first G1 or G2 actually, because it was the metallic one Transformers I got when I was little, and I took it to kindergarten like every day. So despite how much of a whore Bumblebee's turned into, he's always been one of my favorite Transformers. But he's always so up and in the focus in these movies, and I like the way that in this movie they kind of toned him down a little bit to give a little bit more light on the other Transformers in this movie, like Hound. Let's talk about how amazing Hound is. Hound is voiced by John Goodman, and I think that is the greatest thing in the universe. He spoke probably the most out of all the Autobots in this movie, sans Optimus Prime, and I love that aspect. I really did dig Hound. He had a lot of great one-liners. I liked his personality. He's a nice mix of like Bulkhead's sort of structure and just kind of ho-hum attitude, mixed with like a trigger-happy, just really bitter dude. And I love his fight style. He had a very nice fight scene in the Beijing portion of the film that I just liked. He just pulls guns out of like every crevice of his body and just utilizes everything. His head sculpt like has a hat. He takes off the hat, whips it at one of the Decepticons. He like pulls a knife out of like his belly and stuff. It's just it was really cool. I really dug Hound. John Goodman did amazing in the role. His voice lends a character like that absolutely perfect. His kind of brother in arms, even though they bickered all the time, they had a same outlook on humans. They're just like, oh, can we just shoot it? Can we crush it? Can we just get this over with? They're not worth saving. Was Crosshairs, voiced by John DiMaggio, who I always know of as Wrath from Ben 10. He's a brilliant voice actor. Did great as Crosshairs too. He didn't have as many speaking lines as Hound, but he had that like Scottish Australian sort of gruff thing going on with him. And it wasn't bad. I really dig him as a voice actor, and it was cool to see Crosshairs. Um, the scene where he's piloting and then just pushes Bumblebee to the controls and is like, I'm just gonna shoot. Was kind of neat, and I dug the way that Crosshairs was handled. He wasn't fully utilized as much as Hound was, but I did like Crosshairs. Drift was a character I thought I was going to really enjoy, and it's not to say I didn't enjoy Drift. He just didn't get a whole lot to do. He was like this wise Asian guy, and that was really his thing. He didn't do a whole lot. Drift, as we know, obviously, is an ex-Decepticon turned Autobot, honor and all that, but he didn't actually. They never once brought up the fact that Drift was an ex-con, so I don't know if this Drift was an ex-con, but regardless, he is the movie's first official triple changer. Because he goes from the car to a robot, and he's on a cliff. He jumps off the cliff, turns into a helibot. I almost said helibot. Helicopter and flies away. It's not that big of a helicopter. It's apparently only about the size of Bumblebee, but with rotors. And he picks him up and flies him through a building. That was weird. But there's no actual portion of his robot mode that lends to the helicopter whatsoever. So that portion kind of confuses me. I don't know if there'll be any IDW fiction or anything like that fleshes out Movieverse Drift at all. But all in all, outside of the KSI break-in, the helicopter mode for Drift was very much pointless. But that being said, we're probably never going to get a triple changer Drift toy anyway, so we can just pretend this helicopter doesn't exist or something. But it's a neat aspect, but I don't know why a helicopter would be called Drift. But regardless, Ken Watanabe did a good job in the role, I think. It was very much a stereotypical Asian accent. But it wasn't awful. I can't say I really super liked Drift in this movie, but I didn't hate him at all either. And that kind of rounds out that crew. Optimus Prime is a topic of conversation among these movies. And, I mean, rightfully so. He's a iteration of Optimus Prime that most Transformers fans aren't familiar with. I don't want to say he's an asshole. Because a lot of his personality traits are, in the end of the day, justifiable. His reactions toward Megatron throughout, particularly Dark of the Moon, and Revenge of the Fallen in a portion with his reactions toward the Fallen in Megatron. But he's very ruthless. He basically killed Sentinel Prime in cold blood in Dark of the Moon, and Megatron for that matter. But, I mean, looking back on it, he's just like, kill them all. That was an awful Optimus Prime, and I apologize. It's almost justifiable. I mean, Megatron was basically trying to cause a mass exodus of the Earth. Genocide was probably a better choice of words there. And that was the place that he was defending. He liked the Earth. He wanted to protect it. He didn't want what happened to Cybertron to happen to the Earth. And so a reaction like that was, in my mind, justifiable. It is very different. And I understand the sort of hate for it. Because it's just a very different approach to Optimus Prime. A lot of people know Optimus Prime as basically like the definition of justice. Like, he's a good guy that can't really do bad things. And it hurts him to kill people. While this Optimus Prime is just like, die! In fact, when he comes back online, when Cade starts him back up again. His first words in this movie are, "I'll kill you," and he just starts thrashing around, kind of like me when I get scared in the middle of the night and get woken up. But that's not the point. This Optimus is very much different, and I think I think he's in sort of a state of like PSD. Uh, it's I mean, when you think about it, you fought your ass off to protect the Earth from Megatron, and then basically the people you were protecting turn around and attack you, and then try to kill you, and then start killing your friends. It makes sense. I wouldn't really want to protect the people that killed my friends and tried to kill me either. I'm not Gentaro from Forza. I don't do that. Um, it I think it's understandable, and I love Movieverse Prime. I will say that right off the bat. It's a very different take on Optimus Prime, but it's one that I can appreciate given the the story that the films and the film related comics have. I think it works, and like I said, I understand the hate, but I don't feel the same in that regard. So his attitude in this movie is more or less exactly what I would expect from someone in that situation. He is, I don't want to say mentally disturbed, but he's kind of reached a breaking point in the last movie, I believe. And so personally for me, it's something that I enjoy watching out of this Optimus. So like I said, the way he was handled in this movie, I thought was very much a entertaining thing to me. And rage-induced Optimus always makes really awesome fight scenes. He really does. Decepticons, we don't really have any in this movie. There is, if you want to get technical, not a single Decepticon in this entire movie. You get into a debate about whether Galvatron and the other ones are actually Decepticons or not. At the core, they are. They serve as the bad guy Transformers. But there isn't a whole lot to go off of. All of the drones are simply that drones. They do not have any sort of personality whatsoever, like most of the Decepticons, actually. So there isn't a whole lot to go off of. Galvatron didn't have a whole lot of time to shine. He, like I said before, he was just an introductory sort of thing. So there really isn't a whole lot to say about the Decepticons as a whole. Lockdown, anyway, was really badass. I really enjoyed Lockdown. Like I said before, we always have that picture of Lockdown, tall, kind of lanky with the claw. And this one's very much a humanized approach to Lockdown. He is very humanoid in shape and structure, and I thought it worked for the way that Lockdown had to move and everything. I thought a more humanized sort of build kind of really worked for Lockdown. I love the whole gun face thing. His face just kind of like opens and there's like all of a sudden the long-barreled sniper rifle comes out of his head. And so I don't know, I like it. Lockdown was really interesting. He wanted Optimus. He was collecting the Knights of Cybertron, which is another thing in this movie that didn't get fleshed out. I don't understand exactly what was going on there. He said he was collecting the knights. He had a whole bunch of swords. Optimus was the last knight. I don't know who the other knights are. He had a whole lot of weird, creepy creatures in his ship, too. Though for some reason he decided to keep his trophy room in a separate ship attached to his big ship that could detach at any time, so that the Autobots stole his trophy room, basically. So that was really stupid, Lockdown. You should keep your valuables closer to you in a place that is safer. But well, essentially what happened is he stole a night ship and then attached the night ship to his big ship, which was a creator ship. Lots of ships. And so, I mean, I get it. I would have moved to the trophy room, though, but anywho. The creatures don't do a whole lot. The knights aspect is not fleshed out at all. I hope one of the comics or upcoming movies fleshes that out a little bit, hopefully around the time of the creators being fleshed out. We do get to see the hand of a creator. It looks very creepy and sort of alien tentacle, sort of a typical alien hand. But that's a thing. I was really confused on the Knights of Cybertron aspect. I guess what did it even say Knights of Cybertron? I honestly don't remember. But they were always talked about knights. He pulled a sword out and got some knight-ish armor. His body morphed into like a knight armor. Um, and so I feel like it's implied that the Dinobots were kind of part of this whole knight thing too. Um, but yeah, jumping back to Lockdown, very interesting character and a great sort of robotic villain for this movie. Because Galvatron, at the end of the day, was not it. He was the mastermind behind everything, but at the end of the day, he was not the main villain of this movie. Lockdown was, and his death was brilliant. I loved the way that he died. It was very movie-verse Transformers. It really was. And I liked it. It was a very enjoyable death. Everyone kind of pitched in terms of everyone, I mean, everyone that's not Hound, Crosshairs, or Drift helped. So it was a very interesting fight scene to me, that one. I really liked that end scene. It was a very justifiable death. That I really like. A lot of the deaths of these Transformer villains just like happen. Like it's like, oh, he's dead, tough. Same thing with the Autobots, but none of the Autobots died this time, which is good. Well, several Autobots died, but none of the main characters died. But this death was very like cheer worthy. Like it was just a great justifiable death that worked. So we won't see Lockdown anymore. But I don't think there's a whole lot he could have done to flesh out the other movies. He did his thing. He was the catalyst in all of this. He wanted Prime. He could provide a seed. The seed would let the KSI and the CIA. They wanted to detonate in like a desert and then harvest all the metal to build. I think it's 10 years worth, I think, of transformium to build a robotic army for the U.S. government, so we could apparently probably take over the world with robots. Or they could do the nice thing and share the robot. Well, that would just start robot wars. Never mind, that's an awful idea. This is why I'm not a president. But that was the plan, and so they would capture Optimus Prime, give it to Lockdown, they get the seed, Lockdown leaves, and no one really gives a crap. And it was a decent plan that was foiled by the fact that they found out that Megatron was still alive. He was Galvatron, and he wanted to make rise to a new army of Decepticons using this method. So I like the way that the plot sort of entwined with each other. Lockdown was a big catalyst, and like I said, the death was very, very righteous. It was an enjoyable death. Outside of that, there really isn't a whole lot about any of the other Transformers. There was Brains was in this movie for some reason. He was translating Megatron's mind speak, I guess, for the KSI and the CIA. He didn't really do anything noteworthy whatsoever besides be Brains. And he was kind of funny. I've always liked Brains over Wheelie because Brains was less stupid. Well, he was more stupid, but less adult humor. And that was actually a very good thing about this movie. But jumping into human characters real quick, they're always a topic of discussion on these movies. I don't got a whole lot to say about any of them. I really enjoyed Cade, Mark Wahlberg's character. I've always really liked Mark Wahlberg, and I thought he was kind of a good fit for these kind of movies. I could take him a lot more seriously than Sam. Sam was a teenager throughout the movies. He kind of just ran around and went, no, 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 Bumblebee! All the time, and that was really all he did throughout most of those movies. And so as an actual person, I enjoyed Cade. He's an inventor that kind of doesn't suck, but circumstances aren't on his side. And I mean, I can understand that. It's a relatable human trait. And he's an adult. He's a father. He's not some teenager or anything like that. And so he's got a lot of traits that I think most people could identify with more than Sam, who was just a teenager that bought a car who ended up being a Transformer. Cade is an inventor who happened to stumble upon a Transformer. It's very similar, just with an adult instead. And that actually worked for me. I liked Cade a whole lot better than Sam. Sam after the first movie was more or less just obnoxious. Um, so I did enjoy Cade. I'm interested to see what kind of role he'll play in future films, if at all. Because I mean, he really can't do a whole lot. I mean, Sam couldn't either, and they found a way to rope him into every single movie. Um, but at the end of the day, if Cade is in the future films, I'm good with it because I really did enjoy his character. But if he's not, I'm not heartbroken either. Because I don't want him to become a Sam that is more or less shoehorned into these movies because he is the main human character. Um, but I have a feeling he will. I just hope that when he is shoehorned into these movies, that it makes more sense than some of the things that Sam was ultimately dragged into. Um, let's see who else. Tessa and Shane. Tessa was Cade's daughter, played by Nicola Peltz. And Shane was her superstar race car boyfriend, played by John Rayner, Josh Rayner, something like that. I didn't particularly enjoy either of them. They played their purpose. I felt like they were very just plot dump characters, like not plot dump, plot device characters. They served as kind of jumping points for Cade and some of the other elements in the battles and stuff like that. The thing I like most about Tessa over, say, Michaela or Carly, was just the fact that they didn't sort of utilize her beauty. I don't find Nicola Peltz all that attractive, honestly. But they didn't play up the whole boobs, ass, women thing a whole lot in this movie. And that's something I'm going to touch upon in a couple minutes. And so I like that about her, that she wasn't just a girl to be eye candy. She just more or less was a plot device for Cade, really. That's how I feel about both of them, actually. Shane was more or less kind of pointless. He probably could have just not been there. There was another human character at the beginning of the film that I'm totally blanking on the name right now, and I apologize for that because he was funny. He made me laugh. I'm kind of glad he bit the dust about a half hour into the movie because I don't know if I could have tolerated him throughout the entire thing. But yeah, he just kind of just went, and he was gone. Lucas was his name, played by T.J. Miller. I haven't seen a whole lot of him, but I knew who he was going in. So he served his purpose as ha 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 at the beginning of the movie, and then once they deemed him not worthy anymore, they just kind of kicked him out. He was also very much a plot device character to push Cade into fighting. And that kind of covers their group. Jumping onto the other side of things, Joshua Joyce, the founder of KSI, he was interesting. I got where he was going. He was very much a businessman. He had some funny scenes. At the end of the day, he didn't really leave a whole lasting of an impression, but he left the movie a good guy. So I'll give him credit for that. And I think the only other human character that's even worth mentioning is Kelsey Grammer. Attinger, the leader of the CIA. Head of the CIA? I don't know what term the CIA uses. But he was a great villain. I loved Kelsey Grammer in this role. He was just a ass. Like, that was all there was to it, was he was an ass. He didn't want any of the Transformers shit. He watched Chicago get destroyed, and he was like, you know what, F this. You guys are all done. We don't need you. If we take your metal and make our own Transformers that will obey us, we don't need you and your nonsense, and we can fight our own wars, so Basically, that's what it amounted to. And so he was kind of the the lockdown of the humans. In fact, he was partners with Lockdown, hence why it kind of was. I liked him. He didn't do a whole lot throughout the movie, but the scenes that he was in, I think he portrayed that sort of aura of an asshole very well. And his demise was satisfying. It was very sudden, but it was very satisfying. I did enjoy that. Um, the one thing that I did, the mafia guy, he's not mafia, but Savoy, I think it was, his Attinger's death buddy, I guess. He just fell and died. That was moderately appetizing. But he didn't do a whole lot either. He was just a butt to be a butt. The only other thing, human-wise, I want to mention is they, Bing Bing Lee, or Lai, or I think it's Lee. Anyway, she was kind of the Michaela of this movie in a way. It was a very, I don't want to say brief because it dragged on, portion of this movie where she is trying to protect Joyce, and so she fights off the CIA guys and is just protecting him, and it's this like motorcycle chase because he's got the seed and they're trying to get the seed back. It was very, very pointless. I get the whole they're trying to get the seed thing, but that didn't need to happen. She wasn't a character that anyone really cared about, and I don't think she really needed a scene like that. So I have to say, I have to call that out. I thought that was very pointless. So jumping from the characters, I'll end that by saying that I thought the human characters were more interesting than the human characters from the previous three films. I can totally get behind Cade being in more movies as long as they do it right. But yeah, so the humans weren't bad. They didn't drag down the Transformers as much as the other films. So I have to give credit there. Things that this movie did right, in my opinion, was the way the Autobots were handled. Like I mentioned, they all got, I don't want to say equal screen time, but in the olden days, in the other three movies, if you weren't Optimus Prime or Bumblebee, you were kind of shafted. Whereas in this movie, Optimus Prime obviously took a very much of a forefront. Bumblebee kind of took quite a bit of step back. But Hound, Drift, and Crosshairs actually got quite a bit of lines. And I don't want to say development, because that's not true in the slightest. But they got a lot of personality across to the viewer, and I enjoyed that. I thought the way that the Autobots were handled was very great in this movie. Reaction to death, I think, was better in this movie. Not so much by the people, because, I mean, Cade, Tessa, Shane I don't think would care, but Cade and Tessa, rather, watched Lucas get turned into metal, and there was very little remorse there. It was like one sentence of remorse. It was very jazz-like. It was like, oh, he died, and that was it. So I would have liked to see a tiny bit more remorse for Lucas, because he, as annoying as he got, he was very much of an important person in their lives. So I thought that was a little bit of a weird thing, but I love the way that Optimus reacted to the deaths of Leadfoot and Ratchet. Leadfoot not so much, but when he saw them melting down Ratchet's face, and he just snaps. Because, I mean, him and Ratchet go way back, even in this continuity. And so he just snaps and basically storms their laboratory and destroys as much crap as he can with the other Autobots. And I like that. There was remorse for Ironhide in the last film, and I think that's one of the things that ultimately led him to kill Sentinel Prime in Dark of the Moon. But I just love the way that he reacted to Ratchet's death. I thought that was very justified, and I really dug it. So death actually worked quite a bit in this movie compared to the other ones. So I'll give it that. And the action scenes I thought were very, very well done in this movie. They always have been pretty good to me, but this movie had a lot of step back from the military, to the point where the U.S. military wasn't in this movie whatsoever, and I thought that was very interesting given how forced in the military was in the previous three films. There was no military at all because Kelsey Grammer is over here going, yeah, we got this, don't worry about it. So the president's just sitting there not doing a damn thing. And I liked that. It allowed for a lot more robot fighting. There wasn't a bunch of humans running around on the ground with guns and stuff. There was some of that, but it wasn't as played out as it was in the first three movies. So I really dug that. That we got a lot more robot on robot fighting. And that's one of the things that I've always liked about these films. So I think they did pretty good there. Um, I don't remember a ton of plot holes. There was elements that weren't really touched upon, like Drift possibly being an ex-con. The Knights was questionable. The origins of the Dinobots I don't fully get either. I hope that gets mentioned in some piece of fiction. But things that the movie did poor, I would have to probably say the way the Dinobots were handled, I really didn't like. They were hyped up to be a big thing in this movie. It's like Age of Extinction, Extinction dinosaurs, yeah. And it really wasn't. They were a I hate that word. I can never say it properly. Reinforcements. I'll go with that. And that's all they really were. There was no character to any of them, and I wasn't expecting any character from Dinobots, honestly. Um, they were always just kind of dumb little characters, unless you're getting into comic lore. Um, and so I wasn't expecting a whole lot from the Dinobots. They never talked or anything like that, which I'm okay with. They could transform. They did actually show up first in their robot modes, which was neat. Then they turned into dinosaurs, and I don't remember. They did transform once because when they were on the bridge, defending everyone on the bridge, that happened. Um, but they were so underutilized for how much hype they got in this movie that I was legitimately disappointed in. Wasn't expecting them to play a big role, but I was expecting them to at least be in more of the movie. They're fighting in Beijing, and Optimus is still with the crashed ship, and they're like, "We need more help." And he just goes inside the ship and then comes out with dinosaurs. It's justifiable in the fact that Lockdown had a bunch of crazy things on his ship, and apparently he knew them from somewhere. They were legendary, some knight things. I don't know. All the knights rode dinosaurs, maybe, whatever. So there's a brief fight between Optimus and Grimlock. He tames Grimlock, and I guess Grimlock tells everyone else to hang out with the Autobots. And they go and wreck shit. That's all the Dinobots really did. So that was very much of a negative for me. I would have loved to see more fleshed out Dinobots. And another big negative to me is not even a mention or anything of the previous three movies outside of the Chicago devastation. There is no mention of Sam at all. What happened is very much a mystery that me mentally, since I'm such a kind of a story-based person, I really want to know why Bumblebee left Sam. What happened to Sam? Did Sam die? Is Sam like Shia LaBeouf in jail? Maybe. I don't know. But nothing was ever really mentioned about any of the previous characters in these films, and I thought that was a little bit of a letdown. Just a line or two about Bumblebee well, Bumblebee can't really mention Sam all that much, but someone mentioning him, maybe Optimus talking to him about what had happened to him. Just a throwaway line at least. So that the sort of lack of connection with the last three movies outside of the Chicago events worked in favor of gathering new viewers, but kind of didn't work in favor of making it seem very strange. I know 4 years happened, but given the fact that apparently 4 years happened and the Autobots didn't really have a whole lot of communication with each other, I thought that would at least come up once or twice. But yeah, those are my two biggest gripes with the movie. the last thing that I do want to mention in this movie is, like this Ramble, the movie never ended. It kept going and going. It ran for 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. And I understand Michael Bay, you're trying to make like some amusement park-esque skeptical? That's not the word. Um, event. We'll go with event. Uh, to to please people, I guess, even though everyone apparently hates this movie except for me and like Dave and maybe Dawson. Um, but uh it it just never ended. It kept going. There were so many scenes in this movie that didn't need to be there. Like I mentioned, as talented as she was in this movie, Bing Bing Lee's scene with her character fighting in the alleyway didn't need to happen. Um, a lot of the human talk necessarily didn't need to happen. I don't think it really dragged it too far down, but a lot of that didn't need to happen. The fight in, I think it was Chicago again, wherever KSI was located, that didn't need to be as long. It felt like a sort of climactic battle, and it wasn't whatsoever. But it just dragged on, and I think there was definite cuts that could have happened to make this movie a little bit shorter. Um, I'm okay with like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something, but there was an extra half hour of like fluff in this movie that really didn't need to be there. So it just dragged on, and like I said, like this Ramble sort of dragged on, and we've been here a while, and I apologize. Um, so if you're still here, I thank you for listening to me ramble about this movie. But to wrap things up, since I have been talking forever, I will say that the cast of the movie I thought did a pretty decent job. The people who I thought I would enjoy, I enjoyed. The people I knew I wouldn't enjoy, I didn't enjoy. The Autobots were great in this movie. I'm really looking forward to seeing them in the next film because I did like all of them. I thought they all did great. I want Hound to live forever because he was great. I just really like Hound. Um, and I love Optimus in this movie in particular. The way Peter Cullen delivered a lot of his lines had a lot of variation to them depending on his mood, and it wasn't a flat performance at all. Cullen did a great job in this movie, so props to him and props to whoever was doing the voice directing for this movie because it was really well done in terms of the voice acting on this movie. So I will give props there. Um, if I think of anything else to say, I might do a secondary ramble upon later viewings. But I just wanted to do this, get my initial thoughts all across, and again, I do apologize for this dragging so long. I was not expecting that whatsoever, but it happened. So I do apologize for this lasting so long. So if you're still here, thank you for listening. I do very much appreciate it. If you saw the movie, let me know what you think in the comments below. I am fully prepared for an onslaught of this movie was shit. And I respect that. I'm not going to fight opinions or anything like that. I know this was not for everyone, and I went in with a certain mindset, and the movie met the mindset that I went in to view it with. So that is where I stand. I thoroughly enjoyed Age of Extinction. It was a lot better than Revenge of the Fallen. Taking a poop is more satisfying than Revenge of the Fallen. Where it stands between the first one and Dark of the Moon for me, I'm not sure. I want to say it was possibly the more enjoyable than Dark of the Moon for me. The first movie I do have to give a second watch to fully embrace, because the first movie is such a build-up movie that it's very satisfying overall. So I will have to see how it ends up ranking, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And hopefully I'd find more people that liked it so I can talk about it. That's my goal here. So once again, thanks for sticking with me throughout this entirely long ramble that might as well be a podcast. And I very much appreciate it. Be sure to check out some of my other rambles that I've done in the past. And if you have any suggestions for future rambles, please put them in the comments below, and I will take them into consideration if I don't have any new movie or game or anything to talk about on these rambles. So once again, thanks for listening. Take care and have a great one. Bye.